Ladies and gentlemen, ghouls and gals, welcome to the One Dark Fright podcast. My name is Tim Waverla, and let's just say I hope you brought a spoon, because today's show we are under attack from slimy dairy products. That's right, we are dredging through the 1985 killer dessert flick, The Stuff. We are going to power through all the gooey fun this movie has to offer for your listening pleasure. And of course, we have two of the best co-hosts anyone could ask for. First up is Ainsley Pompey. How are you, Ainsley?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing fine. Have you been searching your property for the bubbling white stuff to, mine for as white gold?
I have, and I have not found it yet.
Yeah, it's disappointing. All right, and then finally, the third piece of our mighty triumvirate is none other than Rebecca Kittner. How are you, Rebecca?
Oh, doing well. How are you?
Oh, I'm fine. Did you bring an appetite with you today?
I did, actually. I'm ready.
Would you guys say you were more hungry or less hungry after watching this movie?
It's hard to say. In the beginning, I would say more like hungrier because it looks like marshmallow fluff and it makes you kind of want marshmallow fluff. But then after you see like the mine of it and you see it moving around and then it coming out of people, you kind of like, maybe I don't want to eat that anymore.
I felt the same way. Initially, I mean, it does look like fluff, but it did make me want ice cream, actually. So.
Sounds about right. Yeah, same. It's one of those where like, oh, that looks good. Like I could get some ice cream. And then I'm like, I'm very happy I didn't grab any ice cream by the end of the movie because that wouldn't have been good. All right. So just to kick things off, and I'll start here with you, Ainsley. When did you first get your first spoonful of the stuff? And did you like it right away?
Actually, I just watched it last year for the first time. It had been on my watch list for a really long time. But I don't know, there was something about it that just didn't appeal to me. And then I one day was like, I'm going to watch it. And I liked it. I mean, I thought it was silly and, kind of cheesy, but I liked it.
Yeah. What about you, Rebecca?
First time would be a couple of years ago. And same, it was kind of like one of those where I should get around to watching that. And I liked it. I thought it was kind of cheesy. It was like, I wasn't sure if it was as good as some people had said it was. And then watching it again, like a second time, not that long after, I was like, oh yeah, no, I do really like this movie. Like this is a fun movie.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, same, a couple of years ago was when I caught it for the first time. So none of us have that nostalgia for this movie. But yeah, it was a few years ago, and I don't think I was a huge fan of it the first time. I thought it was pretty silly, and I think it lost my interest a little bit by like the second half of the movie. But then subsequent watching it, I found a little bit of the charm that's in it, and now I like it quite a bit. And, it still has some flaws, which we're going to be talking about. But yeah, I still think it's good. And then on that note, I think we'll just dive on in if you guys are good with that.
Let's do it.
Yep.
All right. So we open on a snowy scene. We're not sure where this is. And we get an older fella named Harry who happens across this white smoking goo gurgling out of the ground and decides that the best way to size this stuff up is to put it in his mouth.
Yeah.
Why do people in movies always jump to tasting things to identify them?
I don't know. It's disgusting, though.
It's gross, right?
It is. Like, who would look at something, especially something white and bubbling out of the ground and be like, yeah, I want to try that. No, nobody would do that.
No. And he gets a coworker to do it with him.
Yeah.
I mean, nothing's going to top that 80s, 90s cliche of finding like the little baggie of white powder and having someone dip a finger in and be like, yep, that's cocaine. Like immediately know the taste of cocaine in their mouth.
That's PCP.
Yeah, it's you get that taste of it on the back end. It's how it finishes on the palate that you can really tell, what it is and what kind of drug it is. It's ridiculous. Yes. It's great.
Well, this guy does have like a misbuttoned, or one side is not much longer, but pretty longer than the other side. So, maybe that has something to do with why he's trying stuff out of the ground. And then the other guy is like, well, I don't eat no snow. So, maybe they're not the brightest people to be eating stuff coming out of the ground.
Simple folk.
That's right.
Yeah, I did notice the jacket. Yeah, one side is significantly longer. Like he missed like 2 buttons off on one side. Yep.
I was trying to look at the top to see if he really did miss buttons or if it was just the way his jacket was. And I could not tell from the top of the jacket. So I was like, maybe that's just the way his jacket is. Unlikely, but trying to give him the benefit of the doubt.
He is smart enough, though, to know that this could be worth mining to sell to people.
Yes.
And after he figures that out, is he likely to become the richest man in America based on how popular this stuff is?
Yes.
Probably right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Except he's not the one. As we learn later, they're addicted to it and they go to the distributor to get it distributed. So he probably doesn't make much money off of it, right?
Yeah. Depends on what kind of deal he struck. Maybe he's not
Yeah.
too business savvy to get his
Nope.
get his name on all of it and get the royalties going forward.
We never hear from him again, do we?
No.
Nope.
Yeah.
Nope. There's a lot of characters that pop up in this and then we never see them again.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're going to cut to Jason's room. I'm figuring Jason to be about 10 to 12 years old. Does that sound right? I was figuring around 12.
Probably.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
12 sounds good.
All right. He is flailing around in his bed with a multitude of issues. He's burning hot. He's apparently hungry. And he is itching like a crackhead going through withdrawals.
And why does his window have no screen on it?
I said the same thing. I'm like, get some screens on those windows, kid.
Like I think he's like swatting away mosquitoes or something. And I'm going, why does your window have no screen in it? They had screens in the 80s. Like, why do you not have screen?
Well, they're going to say later, too, don't you like your room? We gave you everything you wanted.
Not
They
screens.
didn't even give him screens. How great of a room could it be?
Sorry.
He is my kind of kid, though. He's got a devil poster on the wall, and he's got a skull on his desk, like he's performing Shakespeare in the park. And this young actor, he certainly conveys this kid's situation and his convictions through his words, but I don't know if he emotes all that well. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, probably. I mean, I just kept focusing in on how like blue his eyes were. And then
Same.
the rest of it, I wasn't paying attention to, I guess.
Same. I was like, God, his eyes are so light,
Mhm.
Yep.
and you focus on that and he doesn't, probably not like in terms of emoting, he probably doesn't do, but you're kind of just staring at how light his eyes are that you don't really pay attention to the rest of his face.
The whole family's got the blue eyes. I mean, the brother does, but I mean, that's his real life brother.
His real brother, yeah.
Yeah, which I had written down like, man, this kid really looks like he could be his brother. And then, of course, my dumb ass was like, yeah, that is his brother, moron.
I said the same thing.
Yeah. And his eyes, I think, are even lighter than
Mm-hmm.
Jason. And I was like, he almost looks, it's almost weird because of
Mhm.
how light his eyes. And I'm sure that's part of why they picked him to play
Yeah.
that role. He almost looks strange with how light his eyes are and how light they make them, obviously by the way that's shot. I was like, my God, he almost looks alien with how light his eyes are.
He does. He goes downstairs to the fridge, and when he opens the door, this is when we see the stuff slithering around out of the container. So the first notion we're going to get of this stuff being alive. It elicits very little reaction from Jason. He seems more stunned but not freaked out by immobilized food, which is kind of
Mhm.
weird. Dad shows up and catches him and reprimands him for being hungry, like he's a prison inmate, but he sends him back to bed. And then Dad grabs some of the stuff for his own midnight stack. We're going to see how this family operates coming up here. And they're a surly bunch, I would say.
And I was like, what dad gets so mad? Like he gets so mad at him for wandering downstairs and saying he was hungry. And I was like, is this normal? I mean, I don't have kids, none of us have kids. So I was like, I don't know how much experience we have for saying that whether or not this is normal. But I feel like if my kid were to come downstairs and say he was hungry, I'd give him a snack and be like, okay, go to bed. I don't think you would be that irrationally mad at your kid, like whop him on the butt and get back upstairs.
He was definitely overly aggressive for sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes. But again, this could maybe be the stuff taking hold. They've already been eating the stuff, and maybe that's maybe he hasn't always been like that, but he is now because he's been eating the stuff.
I made a note of it later that I was thinking they were showing how angry this family is and how kind of mean they are to each other. Because then later on, we're going to see how kind of like, no, everything's great. And like, I was thinking that's more of the stuff taking over. Like all of a sudden they're all happy and like everything's fine and everything's great. Here, have some of this. So they start out this angry family who just seems to hate this kid. And then a little bit later on, we're going to see where I was like, come on over here, Jason, have some dinner with us. Join the family. Meanwhile here, you couldn't be more upset at him for being hungry in the middle of the night.
Mm-hmm. Right on.
Yeah. All right. So then we're going to cut over to the first commercial that we get for the stuff. We have an actress here in a fully buttoned fur coat who says, "When I was a little girl, I didn't think there was anything that I liked better than ice cream. Now I'm a big girl, and I've decided there's something I like better, much better." At this point, it's pretty close to turning into a porn, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you could actually say that she likes getting stuffed by the stuff.
No joke. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. The implication is definitely there. But then she continues, "It's called the stuff. And believe me, enough is never enough." But then that's it. So we just get that ad, which is our first taste of this poking at consumerism.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
And yeah, it cuts away just before that coat comes off and the saxophone kicks in. So, yeah, just in time. And then we cut to a location where all shady ice cream business deals go down in the 80s, and that is a yacht.
Obviously.
Yeah, I mean, that's just where you do that kind of business.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're going to meet the ice cream magnate here. His name is Evans, who I don't believe is ever named in the movie. He's in the credits named Evans, so that's what I'm going with. He tells us the stuff has acquired Chocolate Chip Charlie's chain of outlets a month ago, and we'll be converting them to go national within 60 days, which is a nugget of information to hold on to for later. This yacht is on the inside pure 80s, very pastel colored, has a bar, a bunch of couches with all different patterns, and of course a piano.
And lots of flowers.
Yep.
A lot of flowers on this yacht.
Yep. It really adds to the ambiance. You're doing these kind of deals. And of course, they're sipping on champagne and they've got cordials and they're basically talking about their inability to get a handle on the stuff and what it's made of and all that. So they've called in an industrial spy. I mean, everybody knows one. This one is Moe Rutherford, the great Michael Moriarty. And Moe arrives on the scene, wandering in like Dean Martin. And he's immediately the most magnetic character in the room.
Yep.
He starts to squabble a little bit with your standard ice cream company henchman. And then we learn that he was kicked out of the FBI, which is something we're going to hear repeatedly. And since he's popped up here and he's so great right out of the gate, what are our thoughts on Moe? Is he the best character we've covered so far?
Initially, you might want to be annoyed with him, but I mean, I feel like the more you go on throughout the film, he's much more likable, I think.
Yep, I like Moe, and I kind of agree. In the beginning, you're kind of like, who is this guy, and is he going to be, because when it's like, oh, there's another sweaty palm, so it's it's funny, but you're like, is he going to be kind of obnoxious, or what's he going to be like? And then you're like, oh no, he's actually really likable. He's a character that you can get behind, and we know the most about him.
Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, I like Moe. Give me Moe of Moe.
Yeah. The sweaty palm thing, he's got one up on everybody in this movie. He wears brown cowboy boots at all times. And he has the most unique way of speaking. Like a much calmer foghorn leghorn.
That's perfect.
That's a good way of describing it.
He's a Southern spy who runs a high-tech operation that includes a lab with a nameless doctor and a research assistant of sorts who just kind of walks into the room and then walks out. And then I think he may or may not have the ability to teleport from location to location because he very rarely is seen traveling. He just shows up places. But my biggest takeaway with Moe is that the movie doesn't work without him, I would say. Because I think it would be kind of a mess. It moves around a lot and he's really the anchor. And like you said, like he gets more likable as the movie goes on, but he does start out as like, what is this guy? Is this the guy we're going to be with for this whole movie? But yeah, he does kind of anchor the movie, and it's one of those kind of mysterious roles where he has a plan, but we don't know it until he's almost all the way completed with his plan. So yeah, he kind of plays that unique, mysterious character pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
We hear that everybody involved with the FDA, I should say everybody the FDA had involved with this stuff being approved has resigned or retired, left the country, whatever. And then Moe is going to infiltrate the business and do some damage, as he says. He does reveal that he has bugged one of the men, the Evans, and he has heard all the disparaging remarks about him. And I only mention it because we get his wonderful opening line where they say, Mr. Rutherford, I don't think you're quite as dumb as you appear to be. And his response, no one is as dumb as I appear to be. Which is great. It's your first clue to like, okay, this guy has a little something going on that we haven't seen yet. So it makes him interesting, I think, out of the gate. But then we're going to cut back to Jason's house and his family. I can only call it Jason's house because we never get any names for the family.
Nope.
Even if you have the subtitles on, it just says Jason's brother, Jason's dad. Like, it's the weirdest thing. They are eating breakfast, and Mom has zero patience for any back talk when she asks his brother to go wake Jason up, and he says he's not going to do it because his cereal is going to get soggy. And I'm on his side.
Yeah.
It kind of already looked like it was soggy, though.
It does. Yeah. Yep.
Like, that shit can wait until the cereal's done at least. I mean, it doesn't look like he had that much more to go either.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Mom says, do as I tell you and do it now. So this was where I was just like, God, this is a really pissed off family. Like, right out of the gate. And Dad is similarly incensed, saying maybe he's exhausted because he was up running around in the middle of the night, because that's what he was doing, not sweating and covered in mosquito bites and maybe a little hungry. But Dad says he's not missing school. I don't care what his excuse is. Jason comes downstairs. He is not hungry. And again, Dad gives zero fucks about that. His brother is going to have some stuff because he's finished up his cereal. And then Jason's like, don't do it. That stuff is spoiled. It's no good. And then everyone's like, it's fine. And it leads to Jason smacking the container out of Mom's hand and have it splattering on the wood cabinets. And her immediate response is, I hope these stains come out. How would that substance stain like a varnished wood cabinet door?
The only thing that I can think that she was referring to is that, sometimes if it's something, you get liquid on wood and it sits there for a while and it'll leave like a wet ring or whatever. Maybe she was thinking that would happen with it. But I thought the same thing. I thought, did she mean on her clothes? And then they showed, I was like, no, the cabinets, just wipe it off.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Which she does. And like 4 seconds later, she's just like, oh no, it's fine. Low in calories, good tasting. And it doesn't even spot.
Yeah.
In a total like Truman Show vibe. And, even later, Jason's going to say, like, why are you talking like you're in a commercial? It's a lot more of that, like, consumerism stuff that they are obviously poking at here.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is the middle of the Reagan era, so quite naturally, that's going to be coming out. So then we move over into the Moe's lab with his nameless lab doctor. We've got a lot of samples all over the counter there with a bunch of the stuff in it, and they're trying to figure out, and they said they can't figure it out. Doc figures it's probably just a lucky accident that tasted good. And so they asked the question that probably everybody is asking, and like, why don't they? Isn't there like a law that says you have to reveal what's in this thing? And whatever the other nameless dude is in the room says it's protected by the FDA's Statute of Identity Rule, which protects companies from revealing secret formulas like Coke syrup. I looked up, it was like 1966 when they came up with, I think it was the USDA came out with like, you have to have the list of ingredients on a product. So I don't see how they can just get around with just having a container that just says all natural, the stuff, and that's it.
Yeah, without having any ingredients whatsoever on it.
Mm-hmm.
Like the whole thing is a secret ingredient. I don't know if you could do that. You have to have at least something.
So then we cut to a commercial shoot for the stuff this time. These women are doing very stiff runway struts to a very Pat Benatar sounding song. And they are also wearing fur coats. Now we can see that they're wearing bathing suits underneath because sex sells.
And what does that have to do with the stuff in terms of like, what is it exactly that they are trying to brand? Like, why the fur coats with the bathing suit? Why not just the bathing suit? Like, I don't quite get the brand of the stuff.
It's a luxury dessert.
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say they're selling luxury, I guess.
That everyone can afford. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose so.
Affordable luxury.
Well, and also, it's a chilled dessert. You're going to wear your fur coat.
All
No,
right.
I don't. That doesn't make any sense. I don't know what the hell it is. I'm just assuming it's a sex sells kind of thing. Here's where we're going to meet Nicole Kendall, who is directing the ad. She runs the PR for the stuff, came up with the name for the stuff. And Moe comes in and interrupts the whole thing. And they sit down and he is immediately disarming. This is where he starts kind of coming off as like semi-charming, I would say, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
He says that Nicole is the one who came up with the name for this stuff. And that has to be like a first come, first serve situation, right?
Nobody's losing any brain cells coming up with a name like this stuff.
I think she probably was like, well, what's in it? And they were like, stuff. And then she shot him the finger guns and popped on the bathing suit and fur coat and walked out the door.
Yep.
I hope so.
I mean, that's how you do it. Moe pretends to be from a petroleum company in the process of buying her PR agency, and that gets her immediately horny. And I do like that career advancement is what gets her frisky.
Yep.
Like that's what gets her like, oh, get me a dress, cancel my dinner date, and where are you staying? Let's go there.
Yep.
It was the 80s, working women.
That's right.
Exactly. So we leave that scene, we cut over to a grocery store, and we see everybody is buying the stuff. At this point, they're not buying like towers of it, but everyone's got at least one container with them. And so we're going to see this is a little bit more of the consumerism at work. Jason wanders through the store with no apparent goal, but just to kind of walk through. And he sees one kid eating it, and he goes Hulk on the entire supply of the stuff here.
This is also where, so, you mentioned it's refrigerated. But why is some are in the refrigerator, some are in the freezer, some are being stacked in a pyramid in the aisle? Is it refrigerated? Does it actually need, like...
That's true.
Yeah. So, because I was like, why are these like store clerks stacking a pyramid of the stuff in the middle of the aisle if it's in the refrigerated section? And then why is it in the frozen section as well as the refrigerator? I was like, it's very unclear, the storage requirements for the stuff.
Maybe they just mean you can enjoy it at all temperatures.
That's true. Yep.
It can be whatever temperature you want it to be at.
It's a very malleable substance. I think it probably goes to like, they don't really know. Is it yogurt? Is it ice cream? What the hell is the substance?
Is it fluff?
Yep. Any texture will work. And two things I would say can kind of clearly see from Jason's freak out. Some of the cartons are clearly empty. And this kid is having a lot of fun wrecking these displays. When he goes and mows down that big pyramid of them, he's got the biggest smile on his face as he like backs away. Like this kid was like, yeah, this is going to be fun. Like he's probably always wanted to do that. And I get it.
Well, when he's taking the stick or like the broom or whatever and doing the line of them that's across the top, he's like trying to hold back a smile that whole time. If you look at him, he's like, holding back a smile and trying not to laugh while he's doing it. I'm like, oh, this would be so much fun as a kid. It'd be so much fun now, but as a kid, it would be so much fun.
I worked in a grocery store for 5 years, and the amount of people that I would see coming like around the corner and hit a display and then just be like, meh, and just keep going is like ridiculous. Like you would think people would be like, oh no. Now they're just like, oh, I knocked over all this pasta. See ya.
Oh my gosh.
They've got somebody to fix that for us. Yeah, that's terrible.
The worst.
That's shitty. I think we learn here that Jason might be superhuman because it takes 3 grown men to restrain him.
That was wild. I was like, what is up with that?
Like he gets away from like the first batch of guys when he's in the initial aisle, and then he does this whole run down like the freezer section, and like 3 grown men just have to wrestle this kid down, and he's still like hooting and hollering like he's going to prison for this. We do see that he gets arrested for, which is funny. I like that they said arrested. So from here, we're going to go, Moe's going to visit someone from the FDA. This is Mr. Vickers, played by guest star Danny Aiello. And so he was part of the FDA panel that approved this stuff, and essentially an amateur butterfly enthusiast. There are butterflies all over this living room.
Everywhere. They're dead in glass, between glass. We used to have these in my house. So I don't know if it's like a common thing from the late 80s, early 90s. Like we used to have these butterflies and moths and that kind of thing. So, but I did notice them because I was like, he's got a lot more than we did. We had, we didn't have that many.
I have one in my house right now. It's a huge moth. And I think I don't know if it's from the 80s, but it's like late 70s, early 80s, actually.
This guy's cashing those FDA checks, so he can afford them all. So the star, I'd say, of this scene is his 1-year-old dog, Ben. which is the size of a miniature horse.
Yeah.
Like that's a big dog.
But it's so cute.
It is. Well, and what you said, Rebecca, what kind of, it's a Dane?
I think it's a Great Dane.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Gotcha. Moe is pretending to be from Consumer Magazine, Ever the Chameleon, though he uses his name.
I was just about to say he uses his real name the whole time. He never like switches it up. But I guess people couldn't look. Well, no, I mean, it's not that long ago. People could look into it as like he uses his same name. Because when who is he talking to? When they were like, what was your name again? And he's like, Moe Rutherford. And I'm like, you can't give him a different name than Moe.
Yeah, I think he does it here because he does it a couple of times because he does.
It might have been this one
because he has to give him the whole like, well, you know why they call me Moe, and it's two different things. Yep. Like it's the Joker. Like, how did I get these scars? But for Moe, it's his name. That's his calling card is how he got his name. Vickers says this is part of the FDA's reasoning for approving this. If there's no reason to forbid the use of a product, then we have to okay it. And I have to wonder if that's actually FDA procedure.
It does make you wonder, like flame retardant things are approved, aren't they, by the FDA now? And and those are like supposedly super dangerous. If you like, I don't know, like chemicals or whatever. But so maybe they live by that. I don't know.
Yeah, and it could be. Yep, that could explain a lot of things.
So I'll say, and it could be a thing of the 80s too. It could be, maybe the FDA had less regulations than they do. Who knows? I don't know.
A little more lax.
Yeah.
Yep. He says that, or Vickers says that he feeds Ben the stuff, and we see this dog walking around growling, looking very uneasy at the conversation that's happening here. And we'll hear that the first place they tested this stuff was in Stater, Virginia, and he goes to get some paperwork for Moe, and then Moe bolts after that, basically, and then Vickers starts talking to the dog, and I half expected the dog to talk back. At this point, the way he addresses him, he's like, "You were real good. We're going to have a treat now. We're both going to have a treat."
Well, and have you ever seen, the Goosebumps dog?
Yes.
That is what I expected, but I expected like the Goosebumps dog, because I was just like, this dog is going to turn into the Goosebumps dog, but that didn't happen. I expected something to happen with the dog.
I just thought it was funny that Vickers said to Moe, "Oh, he's harmless," and that the dog, proceeds to snarl and growl. And I was like, okay.
Yep. Yeah, like, is he friendly? He's harmless. He goes to he will cause you zero harm, and he looks like he wants to harm everything in the room the minute they start talking. Yeah, that's true. Doing the whole, like, I've got a treat for you, I've got a treat for both of us, like, you've been real good. That conjures up the idea, like, a little bit of, like, the drug addiction thing is where that kicks in a little bit. Like, less of the consumerism on that angle, but more of, like, this is a drug, so, like, you did real good, we're going to have a little treat now. So, like, it's a little change in the way they're talking about it here. We're going to see it. They're going to flop over to Moe driving by freestanding stuff location. But then it goes back to that house, and we see that Vickers is under attack from Ben. Not that you would know it by the way the dog is licking him, but he's under attack in a way. And Vickers is yelling into a phone that he hasn't dialed, just saying, "Help me." And anybody who might be on the line, he's probably got a dial tone, but he's begging for help from that anyways. And then we see the stuff start coming out of Ben's mouth. So the first notion that we get of what the stuff does, no idea of how it's going to kill him or what it's going to do to him, but kind of our first instance of that happening.
Time transpired between there, because when Moe drove by that freestanding the stuff establishment, he's like, "Oh, 2:30 a.m. They're still getting it." I'm like, and then they go to Vickers, and I'm like, well, what time did Moe go to this guy's house initially? At midnight? I mean,
thought the same thing.
Though he does say, like, "I'll get more to Ben." So maybe like he gave him some of the stuff, and then he gave him more of the stuff, and then he ran out. Like maybe it just was a multiple hour treat. and then it got that late, and then he was out of the stuff, and he's like, "Oh, I'll get more." Yeah,
and it would have to be because Moe opens that door like into the kitchen, and there's like a little pyramid of it sitting on the table in there. So
there's tons.
They somehow went through all of that in whatever span of time. But yeah, I thought the same thing, Ainsley. Like, So they cut over here to 2:30 in the morning and then back to his house, and now he's being attacked. It's another one of those things where like people just movie just kind of teleports around because even the next scene after that, Moe is just suddenly in Stater, Virginia. Like
Yep.
no time has elapsed. Like in
Yep.
between him checking out the stuff establishment and Ben killing Vickers, Moe has made it to Virginia.
And do we know where Vickers is?
No, they don't think they say, right?
No. Okay.
No.
Or like where we start off at, like where we are. We don't know, right?
I'm going to assume it's New York because when he meets them on the boat, they're in like the harbor of New York. And then later when he's talking to Nicole as they're walking down the street, they're walking down like a New York street. And then they're suddenly like in his building because they're back in the lab. So I assume it's New York, but yeah, they don't say. The movie does
Because I
not
was like,
specify
how
a lot.
long, how far away are these places?
Mhm.
Because when they go from Virginia to Georgia, I'm like, okay, that's not too, I mean, it is a long drive, but it's not too far of a drive. So how far are they away from Stater, Virginia? Like, could you get there within a day? How far is the drive? So it wouldn't be that far from New York.
Yep. Well, I was going to kind of thinking about this later and wondering how much time elapses through this whole movie. Because it goes from being where like everyone is just starting to grab on to what this product is. And, we see at the grocery store, everyone's getting like one. And then all of a sudden there's going to be fridges full of these things. So I'm always curious, like how much time is actually elapsing through the entirety of this movie? Does it take hold that quick that it's just like over the span of a week, a few days? Is it like a few months? They don't really specify, I would say. And you're just kind of left to be like, oh, it just happens over an indescript amount of time. So yeah, he does go to Stater, Virginia, which immediately looks like a cult town. Population 452. And the first place he goes to is the gas station, and the attendant acting super weird, trying to get him into the bathroom. I mean, he just put in a new towel, guys. You have to go into the bathroom.
Was there supposed to be some sort of significance to the fact that he was obsessed with him going to the bathroom, or was that just for the hell of it?
I was thinking it had something to do, like he wanted to kill him, or wanted to, because of having an outsider in Stater.
Yeah.
So that was my thought, is like, he's probably a stuffy and wants him, wants him dead. So I was like, that was my thought, get him trapped in a small place. But honestly, I don't know. Otherwise, it's just the towel.
Yeah, I was assuming the same thing. Like they're being like a cult town. Like it looks like any stranger who wanders in needs to be indoctrinated or killed. But they don't try to be like, here, have some stuff. They just are like, go in the bathroom, quick. We want to do something to you, or whatever it is they're going to do. But then a dusty ass car pulls up, and then Moe goes to check that out while the gas station attendant just bolts for the woods.
Yep.
Just makes a run for it.
Was he going to warn people that there was strangers in the town, you think?
Right?
Yeah,
probably.
Yeah, or just he didn't want to be any part of it. I mean, is this the stuff acting within him? Like, I need to get away from here? Or is this him being like, yeah, it's a really weird situation that he just kind of leaves. After he goes to investigate the car, we're going to get a surprise. Chocolate Chip Charlie comes in with a flying drop kick. And Chocolate Chip Charlie, the only character more charismatic than Moe in this movie, blows him right off the screen and every scene they're in. We're going to hear that he is super pissed at his family. His asshole brother and his two idiot nephews had him thrown out on his beautiful black ass. They apparently were approached by people from the stuff, and they gave up their stock to people from the stuff, and those are the ones that threw Charlie out, is kind of what I got. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And that he found State of Virginia, that would be the place to go check in on this stuff, because if after his family vanished, they left that as the forwarding address, which prompts them to go over to the post office. And we got our next weirdo in the town, being this postal clerk. And he's going to say that, well, actually, we're going to find out that most everyone in the town has gone, which again makes me think of like a drug epidemic, where like a massive population is wiped out and this town is just decimated. I guess here we can kind of talk about it. Do you think it's more of a metaphor for consumerism or for drug addiction at this point? Is it easy to tell what they're going for?
I mean, initially you'd think consumerism, but the further the movie goes, it kind of bounces back and forth between addiction and consumerism, I think.
Yeah. I think initially it leans pretty heavily on consumerism because of all the commercials and the branding and everything in the stores. But then as it goes on, it gets more into addiction. But there's also a lot of shady, I mean, them talking about the FDA and all this, it could have a lot to do with what products are getting approved, how that gets into the consumer. And there's a lot going on in terms of that. It could have to do kind of with the FDA and a little underlying of that rather than just straight up drug addiction. It could be like, well, there's some shady things going on with people getting paid off, people being able to make money off of approving things that aren't exactly kosher for the FDA. And then so there could be some of that going on too.
Yep, that's true. Yeah, I hadn't really thought about how there would be like kind of like this higher level conspiracy going on. It plays out like a conspiracy kind of situation, but yeah, that the FDA being a part of it, I guess they don't make a point of saying like, oh, the FDA is to blame for this or whatever the case may be. They're constantly going after whoever is distributing the stuff. But yeah, it could definitely be saying like, yeah, look at the products that get approved. There's no real regulation keeping these things off the market. They just say, yeah, go ahead. We don't have any reason to forbid it. So, yep, it's fine. Like you said, people probably got paid off and yeah, who knows kind of how they finagled their way through. So yeah, that could definitely be a part of it as well. They find out from the clerk, or I should say they grab the mail from the clerk and find out that all the people there are having their mail forwarded to little town, Midland, Georgia. And the post office clerk tells them to leave. And then he nearly bubbles up with the stuff before excusing himself. I mean, that was a gross sound. This guy's stomach just gurgling up.
The gastric upset is never a good sound.
And as Charlie says, the man is not in proper operating order.
That's right.
And I would agree with that. Charlie suggests snatching the postal clerk, and then Moe says he runs a high-tech operation, but Charlie says he has some low-tech solutions, which is wonderful. But they do hear a rumbling coming from the back, and then Charlie uses his lethal weapons, his fists, to blast through the door just after we see the stuff squirm across the floor and out the window. So we're going to get kind of our first rule of the stuff here. It seems to leave its host if it's threatened.
Yes.
And I think I want to know a little bit more about Chocolate Chip Charlie's backstory. Like, is he a crime-fighting cookie mogul?
Maybe his hands are lethal weapons because he's formed the cookies himself at one point.
There you go.
Yep. That'll take some finger strength and, some forearm stuff. Yep, absolutely. Yeah. And my other question here is with this stuff, like, how does it travel? Where is it going? Like, is it going across the street? Is it going up a tree? Like, when it goes out the window, like, where is it going?
Back into the ground, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean,
there you go.
Find another hole to bubble out of.
Seeps into the ground.
Yeah.
But it goes back into him.
Well, I don't know, because if you saw when they came in, some was bubbling up.
That's right. That's right. Okay. Because I was like, because we cut back to him and he like kind of like and sucks in some of the stuff and he's good. And so I was like, does it go back into him? But that's true. I forgot about it kind of like bubbling up a little bit. Gross. So yeah. So I don't know. I don't know where it goes, but yeah, maybe it goes back in the ground.
Who knows? They leave the postal clerk laying there with that gaping mouth look that rivals the scream. And then Moe is going to chase it and asks if he has a gun, to which Charlie says, how many times do I have to tell you my hands are lethal weapons? And I'm kind of sad we didn't get like a Chocolate Chip Charlie Chuck Norris buddy movie. I mean, one's got the fists, the other one's got the legs that are, lethal weapons. That would have been a pretty killer movie, I think. They look around outside, and then suddenly they're being chased by these dime store droogs from Clockwork Orange. And Charlie says the only thing Chocolate Chip Charlie knows better than fighting is running. To which Moe perfectly responds, pick a direction. And that wonderful drawl of his. These two back and forth is pretty good. They come across a little rowboat in the lake, and they get ambushed by some of these. They call them stuffies. I'm going to stop here. I had a couple different names for them. I'm either going to call them stuff bots or stufficons.
Oh,
I like stufficons.
Yeah.
For a while, I was writing as stuffed boticons because I wasn't sure what we were going to pick. But
Okay.
Stuffacons works for me.
I
Yeah.
like it.
Perfect. Okay. So they punch holes in these things, and we see that the stuff is spewing out of them, like in Halloween 3. And that the giant sign that's right there that says "Do not anchor or dredge" is wonderful because it's so clearly there to hide the light and the actors and the smoke machine that's there. It's perfect, like low budget filmmaking. That made me chuckle. They get away in this little rowboat, and I suppose they row to the nearest diner because the next thing you know, they're in a diner.
Is that possible? I guess. I mean, I'm not close to water, so maybe, I don't know.
I mean, where I grew up, there was some places that were on the water, like on the lake, and on the river. And they're in Virginia. So this is it's possible that this diner is on the water. Unlikely, but it's possible.
The closest diner with a dock. That's where they head. It's wonderful. Yeah, so, and then we get a shot of the postal clerk still alive, and this is when he's waking up. Yeah, so this is one of those ones where, like, do we know any rules of the stuff at this point? We're still figuring them out, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So then we cut to Moe and Charlie at the diner, and it looks like we've got a bit of a citywide conspiracy here because everybody looks like they want to kill them, and they're listening to every word they're saying. And Moe goes right ahead and asks if they have any of the stuff, and the waitress says that they're all out. But then we're going to find out in a minute later that they've got a whole freezer full of it. So they are on to these two. And Moe tells Charlie that they're going to have to split up. Charlie's going to have to go to DC and talk to a friend of Moe's in the FBI. And that's the last we're going to see of Charlie for quite some time, which is very depressing.
Yep.
And then they cut to Moe is back in New York City. Again, he just kind of, I don't know if he hopped in the rowboat and got his way up there or how he traveled up there, but he's back in New York. And a street vendor spots him, and they immediately have like this hit out on him.
Yep.
And they try to run him over in a stuffed van.
Yep. Well, and I was like, so they're organized now. They have like walkie-talkies, and they have a van, and they know what he looks like they're on the lookout for him. They know he's coming. It's like, wow, where did this come up? Like, they didn't seem organized before. It seemed to be kind of localized to, that Virginia area. But
after the gas station clerk couldn't get him in the bathroom, they were like, God damn it, now we're going to have to call in a hit on this guy. It's just like, then it's a whole big deal. Other people have to get in. So, yeah, that's probably why he ran into the woods. He didn't do his job. So he's just like, shit, they're going to have me killed. The stuff van, there's no better way of concealing what you're doing than trying to run somebody over in the van with your company on the side of it.
Yep.
They narrowly miss. And then we see Moe goes to visit Fletcher. I don't know if they name him either in the movie, but he's in the credits as Fletcher. And this is the guy who's the distributor of the stuff in his little Lex Luthor lair that he has. He says he has no idea what's in the stuff, which, again, the USDA, I'm sure, would have some other things to say about that. But he says the people who discovered this stuff were already addicted to it when they brought it to him. So again, we've got the addiction that they're talking about here, and that they had test marketed in Stater, and then people left for Midland, and that's where he owns a mining company. So at this point, Fletcher tells Moe he's got to drop it. So is Moe's goal here to shut down the distributor, or is he just going to try to talk him out of doing this? Is he trying to get information from him? I get a little lost in what his goal is here.
Me too. I'm like, I don't really know what Moe is doing at this point.
I feel like he's got a lot of goals that he's working. I feel like whatever he can get done in this situation, then that's his goal. So if he can get information, great. If he can get him to shut down the operation, great. So basically whatever he can get done, then that's his goal.
Yeah, I would agree with that, because it's hard, unless he has something that he's keeping from us and we're not going to know until later. I don't know, but yeah, it's hard to tell like what it is he's trying to do. He never mentions it, so we're just kind of dragged along for whatever ride he's on. At this point, Fletcher tries to bribe Moe to work for him, gives him a bunch of money, and then just leaves. So that's that. Just gives him 25 grand, which is a nice way to just get $25,000 and be on your way. But this is where him and Nicole are walking down the street, and I suppose at this point he's told Nicole, about what the stuff really is. And then she's all upset, saying that she helped mass market it. And then they go back through the lab, and again, they mention that Moe was kicked out of the FBI. And then this doctor tells, or should I say, shows Moe the newspaper when he sees about a Long Island boy getting arrested in a supermarket. And that, as we know, is Jason. So this catches Moe's interest. And then he tells Nicole, meet him at the airport that night, to which she's like, what? And then, but he just leaves. He's just, again, so charming and disarming, I guess, that she's just like, all right.
I was just wondering how, again, the timing, their relationship like progressed from just meeting to like dating practically.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'm like, what did we miss in between there?
Yep.
They get close real quick.
Especially for her not knowing what he actually does.
Yeah.
Because it's in this scene that he's like, oh, you want to trade sins? Like, I'm an industrial spy. So a lot of time could not have elapsed, because how long is he keeping that up without her doing anything for it? And he's wandering around doing this other stuff. Yeah, it progresses pretty quick. They're in the fast lane.
I mean, I had the question later, what is her role necessarily in this movie? She's there and she gets them through the factory because of her running the PR. But, you know, as a character, they don't really, like, why is he going back to her? You know, why is she meeting them at the airplane? I guess because he needs her for that. Again, he doesn't say it. So then we cut to back to Jason, but we have this wonderful commercial for the stuff as this group is dancing their way through a graffitied alley in a smorgasbord of 80s fashions items on display here. Almost everybody's wearing leg warmers, headbands, and everybody else looks like a cast off from the Beat It video. The guy in front walking down the alley, dribbling a basketball, is wearing a tank top, a bandana tied around his arm, sweatpants, tiny orange shorts over the sweatpants, and leg warmers over his sweatpants.
People in the 80s dressed for all seasons at one time.
Like, my God. I was sweating just looking at him. Like, they're like, if you don't have access to a sauna, just try this outfit on. Like, my God.
But he wanted to keep his arms cool, though. So.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yep.
And I think we need to commission a song like this for the podcast.
Yes.
If any of our listeners out there are into music or write jingles, you know, hit us up. We need a jam like this for sure. I'm not going to sing the bit because it was stuck in my head for 3 days.
Yes.
Mine too.
So
Yes.
I'm not doing it, but it's there. Trust me. Jason is pouting on his bed, bouncing a tennis ball on the floor because he's been grounded upstairs. And then you can hear in the background, there's a news report on TV that entire families have been reported missing. So again, it kind of has that feel of like a drug epidemic. Jason wanders downstairs and the family has thrown out all their food except for the stuff. So here, I guess this is when they've really got a grip on the family, and they're all acting like they're in the Truman Show. And Mom says that they're on a diet and she's lost 5 pounds and never felt better.
Well, it's low calorie, so there you go.
And if it's all they're eating.
There's no ingredients. There's no panel on there. I don't know how they would know it's low calorie, but I guess they just believe the marketing, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So they try to get Jason to have some, and like, this really feels like a red pill, blue pill situation here. The people taking the stuff are just in this ignorant bliss, and poor Jason is suffering because he can see what it's doing to people. So, and he has this debate with his dad about there being living organisms in yogurt and bread.
He's not wrong.
I mean, microorganisms.
Right.
This is not a microorganism. This is macro. This is...
Yes.
You can see this with the naked eye. This is not something you need a microscope for. So I was like, yeah, Dad, we're not having the same conversation. This is no.
How much of this crap do you think these actors had to eat, though? Because they're constantly shoveling this down.
So I don't know if you guys looked up like what it was they were actually eating. I mostly just found when they had big scenes of it that it was just like spray foam and then some sort of concoction of fish guts and something else. I don't know. Everyone was so like stinky that they would immediately like shower after scenes. I did read that in a couple of different places. But as far as the stuff they were eating, they said it was a mixture of just like ice cream and I think, yeah, yogurt
Mm.
at some point. Because I thought, what is it? What is it
What,
really?
what is it? Yeah, that they're eating.
Yeah.
Gross.
Yes,
It has
Gross.
different consistencies throughout the movie.
Yeah.
Like sometimes
it
it looks like
does.
plaster, sometimes it looks
Uh-huh.
like, melted ice cream. Yeah, it definitely
Yeah.
has a bunch of different consistencies. Ooh, that's gross though.
That's
Ugh,
just
Yeah.
gross.
gosh. So at this point, Jason tries to run away, but his brother chases him down and tells him, eat it. Eat as much of it as you can, and you keep eating it. That's aggressive.
Yeah.
It's very aggressive. I'm sure as the big brother, he had fun, like wrestling his younger brother
I
for
was
a
thinking
movie.
that with this. I was like, the big brother had to have fun with this, being like, eat it,
Yep.
Because as a big brother, I feel like that's something you want to do to your little brother. As an older sibling in general, sister, brother, whatever. Sometimes, because, especially when he goes like, he's just a big baby. He's scared of I'm like, I bet this is a conversation they've had outside of this movie. Like they've probably done this before.
Yeah. So they send him up to his room with a container of the stuff saying, you can come back down and be part of the family after you've eaten it. And then we get this weird bit where the parents are like, we bought this house for you. What about your room? Isn't it everything you asked for? Are we asking for so much in return? And the brother says, you always get everything you want. And I had this thought, and I figured I might as well mention it here. This really feels like two movies in one. Like where part of it is like this conspiracy thriller with Moe and Charlie and all these seedy business people. And then there's this family horror with Jason and like the people who are being affected by this and this whole takeover, how the stuff takes over these people. And it's like some weird mashup of The Blob, They Live, and like All the President's Men all wrapped into one. Like, but there isn't enough screen time devoted to either story to really get it. Like this whole thing with the parents saying like, we bought this house for you and oh, you always get everything you want. Like, how do we know that? We don't know anything about this. And all of a sudden they're just kind of springing it on us. So it feels weird that almost like we're plopped in the middle of something that's already happening and we're not given much information on it at all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the parts where we went back to Jason later on, I was like, oh, I forgot about him because I was so focused on Moe for the longest time. So
Yep.
Yeah, 100%. I wrote that this either needed to be like either two different movies or a longer movie or even a limited TV series. I could see this being where like all this stuff can unfold in time. And I'm very rarely the person that says, well, this would work great as a TV show. But I think there could be like a short, limited series on something like the stuff. They could even still do it. So as a movie, as in like an 86-minute movie, whatever it is, kind of leaves us without a lot of information that might have made some of this stuff a little deeper. Or we might have been like, oh yeah, I see, we were shown that earlier, so that makes sense. And or like you said, Ainsley, like, oh yeah, I forgot that they were even in the movie.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the same thing happens at the very end when the ice cream guy comes back and I'm like, holy shit, that guy was in like the first scene and now he's at the very last scene.
I feel like the movie was a product of cutting. Basically, I think I read too that they had cut some stuff out, relationship wise with Moe and the woman. And then, so I'm sure it had more backstory and more information that just got cut out.
I read a little something like that too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Jason takes his tub of the stuff and goes into the upstairs bathroom and dumps it down the toilet, which makes it try to escape. This is where it looks like plaster. It's kind of a weird look to it.
Looks like dough.
Yeah.
Yeah, looks like dough.
He has the idea to fill that container back up with shaving cream. Of note in the bathroom, I should say, is a Motley Crue poster on the wall and a Return of the Jedi shower curtain.
Yeah, I noticed that.
A+ for the set
That
designer.
is probably the boys' bathroom. Like it's probably their bathroom, probably not the parents.
That kid got whatever he wanted. He probably was like, I want a Motley Crue poster and I want a Return of the Jedi shower curtain.
Yeah. But so why did he fill it all the way up with shaving cream? He's supposed to be eating it. He could have put just a little bit in there.
Yep.
Or none at all and been like, oh, I finished it.
Yep.
Rookie mistake.
Yeah,
Why'd you do that?
Leave like a little tiny bit in it and just be like, oh, here's the last spoon, all done now.
Yep. Like he thought about it, but he didn't like think it through.
No.
He didn't think about, oh yeah, I might have to eat this and I'm going to have to eat shaving cream.
Yeah.
Which I feel like you would probably immediately throw up, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's another thing I did not want to imagine what that would taste like. No, thank you. He comes back downstairs and Mom is plopping a massive bowl of the stuff in the middle of the table, like an industrial bowl of this gunk. And the brother says, "I never get tired anymore." And the dad responds by saying, "They've been eating properly, so they don't get tired." And I was just like, all right, this is something I can get behind,
Yeah, it sounds great.
Jason is taking little bites of the shaving cream at this point, and then he blows his cover by nearly puking it up and bolts for the door. And then Dad realizes what he's been eating, and they give a pretty good chase here before Moe shows up, like the wonderful hero that he is. Jason gets in the car, and as the family reaches the car, instead of trying to get in the car, they seem to give it a push.
Yeah. I mean, Moe just straight up kidnapped him.
Mm-hmm. He really did.
Well, and I love like what they're saying. They're like, "Who are you?" Or something like that. And I'm like, I mean, valid question. Who are you? Why are you taking our kid away? We might be overtaken by the stuff, but who are you and why are you taking our kid away?
Yep. So then they get into the car and they have like this poor man's process of the static car sitting there in like a dark garage, while some grips shake the car and move some lights down the side, and he jostles the wheel back and forth like they do in movies, as if anybody drives like that.
Nobody drives like that with their hands really close and tight.
Shaking it.
Yep, just shimmying down the road. Yeah, that's always that low budget filmmaking. It's the wonderful charm of it. So at this point, they arrive at the airport and they meet up with Nicole, who's there waiting in her best dress and heels.
Mm-hmm.
And Jason seems to be pretty stoked to be just flying away with two strangers.
Yeah. And I don't know that he knows where they're going, right?
I mean, maybe Moe told him in the car, but yeah, maybe they don't say it out loud. Yep.
Yeah.
And this is again where the kid isn't really like super emotive. Like the thing that gives his lines character is that Long Island accent that he has. They land in Midland, Georgia, and Moe tells the pilot to keep an eye on Jason because he's conked out in the cabin. And if they don't come back in 3 hours, to head over to just take him to Savannah, Georgia. And then Moe and Nicole get into a limo with a couple of people from, I guess, Fletcher's firm. This is where they use different names. Miss Butterman, and she calls Moe her male secretary, Roger.
I mean, if the shoe fits.
Yeah.
Not just a secretary, a male secretary.
Don't be alarmed, guys. He's a male secretary.
He's a male secretary.
So they arrive at this factory / rock quarry. And then, yeah. And then we see, it cuts back to the plane. We can see Jason is waking up and the plane is being besieged by the Stuffacons. And we see the postal clerk pop up in the window.
I was going to say, it's the postal clerk from Virginia is now in Georgia.
Popping up like a henchman.
How did he get there? How did he know? How did he know? I mean, he had to figure they were going to Georgia based off of them getting the letters, and seeing everybody's mail is being forwarded.
Mm-hmm.
But how did he know that plane was going to be there? How did he just know there's somebody inside?
Well, they've got like hits out now. They've got, like you said, communications going on. Like the stuff people have like a little inner circle, and they've got a little process going. It's effective. I mean, it doesn't work on Jason because he just bails out of this plane, like right through the escape hatch. They show that in the cockpit, the pilot has a slab of the stuff smothering his face. And that's the first time we're going to see that happen, though not the last.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Jason does get out and makes a bolt for the woods. And then we cut back to Moe and Nicole at the factory, and they're being led around by this foreman, Cassidy, which I think is funny that we get a name for this guy. Meanwhile, we get all these workers dressed in these yellow jumpsuits, so they're proper henchmen. We can distinguish who's the bad guys and who's the good guys. The bad guys are wearing yellow. And then as they're walking through, we can see like the stuff in these vats, and it's like bubbling up. Like it looks like it's in distress.
I couldn't get over the fact that they're just open vats. I thought there's got to be a bunch of hair in there. Because nobody was wearing any sort of hair nets or anything. They're just free-flowing hair and open vats of the stuff.
See, that goes back to like, maybe not the FDA, but maybe, what is it? OSHA? Is it OSHA that comes?
Yeah.
The health department, that comes in and inspects these things. Like, where is all their gear that's supposed to stay out of the food? Where is it? Yeah, I didn't think about that. That's super gross. But so, and yes, I just thought that's just how it naturally is, because in the beginning, it's bubbling out of the ground. So I just assumed it kind of just bubbles on its own, which is weird because it doesn't do it in the containers.
Exactly.
But I just assumed that's kind of just what it naturally does. It just kind of bubbles.
Mm-hmm. Well, and on top of not having like lids on these things, they show it being mixed with a big like industrial mixer. Like, what is it mixing? Like, there's no ingredients. What the hell is it mixing?
Yes, the hair.
Yeah. Got to get that in there.
The fingernail clippings.
Oh, no.
Let's see what else we can think of. Oh, yeah. And then at this point, Jason is wandering around into the quarry where he sees these tanker trucks that are sitting there parked ready to be pumped full of the goo. And he winds up hiding in one of them, which will prove to be a poor decision. Cassidy tells Nicole and Moe that they've arranged a motel room for them, that they can come back to the factory in the morning. And then as they're heading to, like, they just kind of bail. I don't know if there was any real reason to them being there that first day. They just kind of walk around and not much happens. And then we'll see them at the Starlight Motel. Moe thinks that Jason's got to be in Savannah by now because obviously he doesn't know what happened in the plane. And then they're lying in bed and this commercial comes on for Andre's exclusive continental restaurant, which only caters to the most discriminating clientele, which is quite something to advertise for.
Mm-hmm.
Only difficult people need apply.
Sorry.
But the commercial does feature the great Abe Vigoda and Clara Peller of Where's the Beef fame.
Yep.
And then we hear another catchy ditty on the radio or on the TV as another commercial comes on. But this time they're not like walking through that graffitied alley in New York City. This time the stuff is hovering over the earth. And I'm assuming that's a subtle nod to their increasing grip on the world. Does that sound right?
Yes.
Yeah.
They're taking over.
And at this point, do we think it's just in the US or that it is a global thing?
I mean, I guess based off that commercial, you would think it'd be global.
So then we see that Moe and Nicole are asleep, and suddenly the no vacancy sign lights up on the Starlight Motel sign. And then despite only two cars being in the lot, so we know something's about to go down. Nicole is swatting mosquitoes now, like Jason was earlier. And then all of a sudden the stuff just rips out of Moe's pillow and wraps around his face. And I just love scenes like this.
Why do you have his boots on still in bed?
Oh my God, I didn't even see that, does he?
Yeah,
I didn't notice
he jumped
that.
up and the boots were still on. And I was like, okay.
It's got to be ready to go.
Sorry.
That's funny. I didn't even catch that.
Oh, gosh.
This is my favorite low budget trick, though, where they have got a prop attached to an actor who just throws his body around the room.
Yes.
Because so we can't see that it's a prop that's not moving at all. It's like the cat in Reanimator, which is hysterical. I love it. So yeah, it works really well here, and he's really throwing himself around. But Nicole's first idea is a dead-on bullseye. She dumps that lamp oil on it and burns it right off of his face. So we get another rule here. The stuff responds to heat, fire, which is kind of like the blob, which responds to cold. So we got a little flip on that one. Did you guys ever have those old oil lamps?
Yes, we did. Yep.
No, I never had them. I've owned like ones just for decor pieces, but I've never actually utilized one for light.
My grandmother had some, and I completely forgot about them until I saw it in there. I'm like, oh, that's right. They had the oil lamps.
I completely forgot about it until you just asked about it. And I was like, oh, that's right. We did have that. I don't know if we ever lit it that often but we did have one.
How did Nicole know that she wasn't going to burn Moe's whole face off? Like, she just went for it. And I thought, well,
right.
Bold.
I don't know if you should.
Yeah. If it's literally like an ice cream substance, yeah, that's going to burn his face.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when it comes off of his face, he said, you can hear him saying like, it hardened on my face.
Yeah.
But she doesn't know that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a pretty gutsy move. And she goes right to, well, let's light your face on fire and see if that works. And at this point, the room is partially on fire, and one of the Stefficons rushes in to attack. And Moe throws him off, and then this massive blob of the stuff just pours out of this bed. pinning him to the wall, and we get them to show off their rotating room gag.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the same room that they used in A Nightmare on Elm Street. I did read that.
Is it? Yeah.
Cool.
Same set or whatever. They just changed it around. Yeah.
I remember learning about that Nightmare on Elm Street room, and I'm like,
Mhm.
that makes sense. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
that adds up. Yeah, it's cool. So Moe grabs a little bit more of that lamp oil, and then he lights it on fire, and we can hear the stuff screaming. So we have to assume it feels pain.
I guess.
Add another layer to that character.
Mm-hmm.
Feels pain. They hotwire the pickup truck outside, and then they decide they're going to go back to the factory for a little tour of their own. And then so they go back there, and Jason is trapped in the tanker as it's heading towards the quarry. And then Moe and Nicole are following along in that pickup truck, and Nicole is back in that dress now.
Mm-hmm.
She was in like a nightshirt, and now she's back in the dress. And I could see that she's got something in her arms when they're in the truck, but that was the only thing she could grab was the dress.
Yeah.
And the heels.
Yeah.
She had to get the whole outfit, you know?
Well, and then she chides him for not grabbing her purse.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, all she grabbed was a dress.
Yep.
So they kind of pull up to this little like cliff above the quarry, and they can see that that's where the stuff is coming out of, this big old pit in the middle of the quarry. And Moe devises a plan. He's going to steal one of those tanker trucks because he has snatched one of those yellow jumpsuits, which I didn't see him do.
No, I didn't either.
Might have been another one of those in between shots that we just didn't get. Like he's got a plan, but we're not even allowed to see any of the plan happen. Like he stole this thing off camera. And he also seems to have some plastic explosives with him now.
When did he have time to get those? Where'd they come from?
Where did they come from?
Mhm.
Yeah,
And he just had those in the room?
exactly. He brought those on the plane with him when they flew up there.
I mean, it was the 80s, security wasn't as big of a deal. Maybe they just got right through with it.
And it is a private plane.
Well, I was going to say,
So-
it's like a privately chartered plane. Like he
Yeah.
says he's got a high-tech operation. Like he's got to have this money rolling in if he's chartering plane. I mean, he just got 25 grand for doing nothing from some guy
Yep.
who's going to hire him, but didn't actually hire him. At this point, they realize that this stuff just comes out of the ground like a natural resource. And he tells Nicole to take the truck and then meet him back at Route 5. And then they have a little smooch. So we can see that they have really progressed in their relationship at this point. Nothing gets somebody excited like a little danger. And then we hear over the PA, the stuff's, I'd say it's mission statement or it's cult manifesto. They say it's coming down in great masses tonight. Be grateful for its plentiful supply and for the good work we are doing. Soon the hunger of the world will be a thing of the past. The earth is giving off the food that will nourish us all and guide us all to a new order of life.
I mean, I can get behind it.
Yeah. If it wasn't a mind controlling substance, then
Yeah.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
Yep.
If it was like corn, sure.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
the stuff, maybe not so much.
Yeah. I'm wondering how natural this stuff is. Like, so we're just supposed to believe that all of a sudden it's just was bubbling out of the core of the earth, just bubbled its
Yeah.
way up, like nobody put it there.
Yeah. It's not alien, you know? Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing. At that last speech that they give, he says we're under attack by an alien substance, but
Yep.
we're never given any clue that that's what it is.
He might not mean alien as in alien. You know, he could mean alien as in
No.
foreign.
Yeah.
Well,
So, because that's how I take it when he says that. But yeah, I was like, because we're not given any indication that it's of outer space. And in the end, I know I'm jumping ahead, but in the end, he says, like, there are other, you think you stopped us by blowing that up? There are other places that it comes up out of, or something like that. So clearly it comes out of the ground. Why is something that comes out? Well, I mean, shrooms.
Yeah.
So there's some drugs that cause some mental that are natural.
Yep. He places those plastic explosive charges all over the kind of around the quarry there. And he walks through the work site and he knocks out Cassidy. And then we see Jason is about to be covered in the stuff as they start siphoning into the tanker. First he panics, and then he has his come to Jesus moment where he's just like, what are you waiting for? Do something. And that's how we know he's a real New Yorker. Because first he's like, oh shit, and then he's like, you know what? Start something. Let's see what you got. But then he's immediately begging for help. But wonderfully, Moe creeps up alongside the tanker and he hears him hops in that truck, and then he hits the old detonate button on that remote, and it fills that hole with a very thin layer of rock, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They're going to say later that they go to check out the quarry and that it's filled in with rock. I don't know if that would completely fill it in, but I suppose we can stretch our imaginations a little bit. At this point, all that has happened, and Nicole still hasn't gotten in the truck. So she really has not been doing anything, I suppose, until he was going to blow the whole thing up. She goes to get back in the truck. Lo and behold, our postal worker pops out again.
Speaking
guy.
of teleportation, he's kind of everywhere.
He's like the face of the enemy in this movie. He comes at her with like this Frankenstein attack, the arms out thing, like not an effective attack strategy, but it's a classic. Yeah, he just pops up everywhere.
Yep.
They struggle a bit before she hits him with the good old fashioned eye gouge, knocks him down, and then Moe runs him over with that truck, and he explodes like a toothpaste tube in a vice grip.
Oh, that was great.
It was good.
That was good.
Yeah. It's hard to tell if he exploded or imploded, whatever the case may be.
Is that his head looks like it implodes?
Yeah.
But then the rest of him like kind of explodes. So it's kind of both.
Yeah. Moe then gets up on top of the tanker, undoes that lid just in time to save Jason, because Moe is good at what he does. And then on their way out, they get pulled over by a cop, but they trick him by pretending to be some Stefakans as well. And then that's that. And then we are going to now get into our final section of the movie where the tanker pulls up at this castle that we'll find out is habitated by Colonel Spears. And Moe says he knows him, but that guy doesn't know who he is. And as soon as he gets out of the truck, he's approached by this small militia. And I wasn't sure what to call them, but I could see on Spears' arm, he's got a little patch that says the Spearheads.
I didn't catch that.
I didn't catch it until the
either.
last time we watched, and I was like, the Spearheads. Okay. All right. Like a minor league basketball team or something. He gets up to the main deck of the castle, and he is speaking now with Colonel Spears, who is played by Paul Sorvino, who is both an indelible character here, but also an absolute piece of garbage in many ways. The first introduction they have is that Moe saying he was responsible for some wiretaps on an apartment that he had rented for a 17-year-old black girl. So the first thing we know about this guy is statutory rape.
Yep.
So right out of the gate, class act. And then those tapes were mailed to Spears' wife, and Spears is not too happy with this introduction, but then Moe immediately disarms him by just appealing to his vanity, I guess, and his like conspiratorial nature. Like this guy just buys everything hook, line, and sinker. And he says like, all right, let's go do this. Like it doesn't take much convincing. They go back downstairs. I like the back and forth Jason has with the militia guy. He's like, what are you, in the army or something? We're your only army, son. This is quite the militant group. Spears immediately puts the moves on Nicole, and I'm sure she is super thrilled with this. And then Moe replies that she's spoken for, because she can't say that. Moe's got to say it for her. Yep. And then Spears tells him not to worry, that Moe will probably be a casualty. So then they move in on the factory. They immediately go to attack. The two guys from the militia are posing as locals who found the truck. The factory worker doesn't really go for it, shoots him in the face. And then Spears jumps out and just blasts him. And he has the line, I kind of like the sight of blood, but this is disgusting.
Yeah, you're like, what?
He saw the hair. The hair.
No, he did. He's like, gross.
It's like, oh.
Yeah, that makes sense. But then we get like this, they storm the factory like it's something out of Stripes. Like this super comical music playing in the background. Yeah. So the factory goes into crisis mode. All the workers flee, and the PA system instructs them to follow the agreed upon course of action. And then they head inside, and again, Jason and him have a wonderful back and forth. Spears says out loud, "We never lost a war." Jason, "What about Nam, sir? We lost that war at home, Sonny." Which is terrific. So then they walk into the next room. The workers are all dead. They assume that they took some suicide caps. But then they smack one open, and I guess we're to assume that the stuff just left their bodies.
That's what I thought, because the person's dry on the inside. Like,
I mean,
Dry. I mean, yeah.
I mean, a powder comes out of them, it looks like, right?
Which, I mean, they're dry.
They are not well hydrated. They need some more water.
Exactly.
Some aloe, some lotion.
Yeah, they're a little dry. So I was like, I guess that's what that means. The stuff left. And when they're getting chased by all the stuff, I took that to mean like that's all the stuff that left their bodies and is following Nicole and Jason.
That makes sense. Because again, we don't see where it goes. Like when it leaves these people, it just wanders off. I guess maybe it just forms a big blob, like you said. Because at that point, Nicole drags Jason away, which he's not okay with.
Mm-hmm.
They wander back into this like laundry looking room, I guess, and then they're attacked by it in a very like 50s monster movie looking kind of way, where you could tell that the two elements were not in the same room together, which is funny. It's got a little charm to it, but it's low budget. It's fine. They get out, and then we can see like all the towers filled with the stuff start to burst and leak out. And their plan is, we're just going to leave it here and we're going to go. So no plan to take care of this stuff. We're just going to bail.
Yeah, I was going to say, wouldn't it be like, let's set it on fire? Or what was the goal of going there in the first place?
That was like when I was thinking like, so what is the goal? Is it just to get to the top of the food chain and have them to take them to task and be like, you have to stop making this stuff. You have to stop marketing this stuff. Because when they actually come across it, they're just like, we're going to leave it here. We're going down to Atlanta where I have a radio station. We're going to tell people about this. Not like, oh, let's take care of this major center where it's literally coming from. So yeah, this is another thing that makes me question what the hell the plan could be. So then they fly down to Atlanta. They hop on this plane, and the first thing we hear from Spears is that 75, 80, 90% of people in this world don't like me. Why are we expecting the country to listen to this guy talking about some goop that's killing them from the inside when the vast majority of the world doesn't like him?
Yep.
What kind of plan is that?
Yeah, I don't know.
He goes on this whole bit saying that people have never liked him because when he was a boy, he was always the biggest and the toughest and the smartest and the best looking. But people want to see weak, spineless people like them, which is nothing more endearing than just bragging about yourself and calling everybody else basically a pile of goo.
Especially when he kind of like says that about Moe.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's like, oh, right, FBI.
Ain't that right, FBI?
Yeah. And it's like, Moe has done more than you have this whole time. So pump the brakes there, Colonel.
It's got to be pure satire, right? They're lampooning like this kind of wacko, ultra conservative nut job.
Yeah.
Do you guys like this last 20 minutes of the movie?
No. I mean, I get what they were going for, but it just kind of felt like, oh, that's it. That's what they're going to do. They're going to do a broadcast and then be done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It felt kind of disconnected. Didn't feel like that's the direction it was going to go. Like the rest was more action and like kind of mystery and all this. And then this is how it ends. It kind of is like, oh.
Yeah. I mean, it tries to keep like its eccentric edge by adding this Colonel Spears character that is obviously completely whacked out. And I guess it adds to the satire of what they're doing, that they would require the services of this kind of right-wing militia to save the day. But I definitely found it less interesting than the stuff we were watching earlier. Mm-hmm. We keep saying stuff. I need to find a different term for it. Like all this stuff we like, for lack of a better term, all the stuff we've been watching. So they arrive in Atlanta. Again, we have this cavalry riding into town in taxis with all their machine guns sticking out the window. And they get out and he says, pay the drivers and issue a 10% tip, get a cash receipt. So I guess we're supposed to be laughing at this guy at this point. I mean, we've been laughing at him most of the time, but it just continues. And then so they get inside and they tell him that all the affiliates are going to carry his remarks in full, which again, I just don't understand how that would ever happen.
Yep.
And then, but thank God, Charlie shows up out of nowhere. It's been how long since we haven't had Charlie, but he shows up, starts pushing his way through, saying, my hands are registered with the Midland, Georgia police as lethal weapons, and I eat them guns for breakfast.
Sorry.
It's the best.
Good
He just wants to be part of the broadcast. Spears, however, wants no part of that until Moe and Nicole kind of talk him down, mentioning how much reach he has and how much money it will generate. And his response is, I will permit this colored man to speak, but speak one word of the Commie Party line or one word in code, and I will blow his head off.
Yeah, that was pretty rough there for sure.
Yeah.
It's a little intense.
And too, they do. I feel like they're referencing the Cold War a lot, often. Well, not a lot, but off and on a little bit in certain places in this movie too. So
Yep.
I'm like, that's a whole nother added element in there as well as the consumerism and addiction and everything.
Yep.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, if they're, if they treat it like basically like those 40s and 50s sci-fi movies did, this fear of, the Red Scare and,
Yeah.
like Invasion of the Body Snatchers was, all about fear of that sort of thing. So yeah, that definitely is another layer in there to be like, well, this took place during the Cold War. Yeah, 100%. Be like, who's bringing in this substance? Is it the commies?
Yeah.
So Charlie says he needs to go get his thoughts collected. So he goes with Nicole into some back room to get ready. And then he gets a little cryptic here and starts saying that he knows what happens to like the bodies after the stuff goes out and comes back or whatever it is he says. And then suddenly we see that neck appliance on him. And we get quite the image of old Charlie as he goes full boa constrictor here. And that jaw just opens up. And what has to be the signature image from the movie, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you look up, like, do an image search of the stuff, that's 75% of the pictures is that for sure. I think they did Charlie a bit wrong here, right? We wanted more Charlie.
Yep.
We didn't want to see him go out like this. Like, he's such an enigmatic character, and we didn't get, like, a quarter of his journey in this movie at all.
And wasn't he on SNL? Like, I know he was an SNL member, I guess. I don't remember what years, but you would think that they would have featured him a little bit more in the movie because of that. Because I did read that they had initially wanted Arsenio Hall because he was up and coming, but they decided to use, and I'm forgetting the name of the actor at this moment, but they decided to use him instead because they thought he was more likable and more well-known. But then they didn't utilize him very well in the movie, which I thought was really strange.
Garrett Morris.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, I did read that too about the Arsenio Hall.
Yeah.
Thing. And I think they also mentioned they were going to use Eddie Murphy at one point too, for that part, but then they didn't go with him either. But yeah, like, he blows everybody off the screen when he's on. I don't understand how you kick him out when you do. And we get these final scenes with this colonel. Like, give me more Charlie. Let's have Moe and Charlie team up and do this. That would have been a way better ending to this movie.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, it would have been great if they had put Charlie on the radio, and had Charlie do the broadcast with Moe. I was like, that would have been great. Well,
and also with what happens to him here, they could have really used that, like, the paranoia angle, like from The Thing, where, like, you don't know who's got the stuff, you don't know who's the Stuffacon. Is this guy it? Like, it would be a great companion piece. You've got The Thing and the stuff, and they could have been like a similar thing that they went with, but they went this angle instead and went with this kind of loony ending.
It's funny you mentioned that, though, because I watched it with my husband, as I always do, and he said the same thing. He said this kind of reminds me of The Thing in a way, that it's the way it's being played out. So yeah, I mean, double box set right there.
Yeah,
do those
boom.
two together.
Yeah. You want to watch The Thing or The Stuff tonight? Yeah, it's people like, you're going to give me an actual title? Like, that's the title.
Yep, that's it.
Could have been a whole universe. Would have been great.
Yep.
Jason wanders into that room just as Charlie's melting. And this is going to lead into that great bit at the end where the kid's like, I've seen some shit. And he walks in as Charlie's melting into a truly impressive amount of the stuff. Like, there is a mound of the stuff that he turns into. The two of them scream, and then Moe comes in and cracks the glass in a very 50s B monster movie scene where there's no glass there. Nope. And then he takes those severed electrical wires, and there's that, like, cartoon animation going on there. Another more like Scooby-Doo kind of thing happening there. It's low budget at its most absurd and charming, right?
It is.
It is. Well, and I love that, he does he shoot the electrical wire, and then, but all of a sudden now it's like pretty even, and they have all these little wire ends coming out on both sides. It was like, that's how it works. And just all these little wire pieces come out, and it's like, that's,
And I'm not sure if it was this scene or not, but Nicole kept calling for David, and I'm like, who the hell is David? And then I remembered it was Moe.
Yeah. They do that so much in this movie. They spend so much time like going Moe and him having his little jokes on why he's called Moe, and then later they keep calling him David.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's peculiar, but yeah, I know it's just like David. Like, oh, that's right, that's Moe. It's Moe. Just call him Moe. Gives him a little bit more character too. But they get out alive, and really none of the, like except for Charlie, none of the main characters die in this movie. You know, like Jason's family presumably would be dead at some point, I'm assuming, but we don't see a lot of the main cast go. Of course, it's Charlie, the best character that we get, but yeah, at this point, so those two get out alive, and then Spears goes on the air and gives his whole "we're under alien attack," and yeah, I hadn't really thought of it being like an alien substance, but to someone like Spears, anything like non-American right wing would be an alien to him.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's why I think of it that way.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Who he is. Yeah.
And then this prompts immediate reaction. And we get this kind of coda from Nicole where she's saying that people believed it. And the stuff was withdrawn from distribution. People mobilized to collect and destroy it. Public health authorities visited the quarry in Midland, but it was buried. The silos blow up. That freestanding stuff restaurant is blown up. And they did all this on the word of this crazy militia guy. Not to mention, like, how many people were already addicted to the stuff? Like, would this work? There were so many people that were already using the stuff and were already under its control. I can't imagine there were that many people that would A, believe this guy and be unaffected by it.
Yeah, because if you're addicted to something, you know, you're going to treatment and trying to get off of that substance. I mean, I guess if if you're a smoker, some people go cold turkey and just quit. But I mean, as far as the stuff, that's pretty hardcore. I don't think you could just stop it and be done. So, and plus, like, if you look at the way the world is now, I can't imagine anyone would take his word for it and just be like, yeah, we're listening to this guy that we don't like. We're going to do what he says. Like, I just don't think any of that was plausible, really.
Mm-mm. Yeah, I agree. I was just like, they set it up to where this guy is kind of so out there to where we also know that people don't like him. And then we're supposed to believe that people believe him. And I was like, I feel like this is not how this would go down. People would be like, okay, sure.
Yeah. You change the station. I mean, I know this is back in the 80s and there were fewer stations to be listening to, but you wouldn't be like, he says it's not a dramatization, so which I'm assuming they're like doing like the War of the Worlds thing. Like, this isn't that, this is real, but it's coming from somebody who you'd be like, well, that guy's fucking nuts. Why would we listen to anything he has to say?
Yeah. Yep.
I don't know. So, but apparently it works. They said the casualties were in the thousands, which I guess they kept it fairly low considering they said like tens of millions of people were eating it. So, that's relatively low, I suppose, in percentage wise of all that. We get this final bit now where Moe shows back up in Fletcher's lair wearing a trench coat and carrying a pistol like a 40s gumshoe. Yeah, this is where Fletcher says there's more places, like you think just covering up one is going to stop everything. And then that guy from the beginning, the ice cream guy, Evans, pops back out and says that he's in business with him now. Like, we're supposed to care about this at the end of the movie because he hasn't been there for over an hour. And they said they've got a new product now, the Taste, which only has 12% of the stuff in it, just enough to make the public crave for more. Would that work? Do you think they're advertising it as only containing 12% of the stuff? Or is that just like a secret that they're keeping in there?
I mean, I don't know. It's kind of like I thought of immediately was like, if something was said to be bad for you and you would quit it, you wouldn't want to go back to it if there was that chance that you'd become addicted to it. But then I kind of thought too, like with microdosing of shrooms or mushrooms, like people microdose those. And if you just, don't do that and take a whole bunch of them, like they could be really bad for you or whatever. So I'm like, I don't know if they were that smart in the 80s, but I'm like, maybe they're in this thought process where they're like, just like a little bit is just enough. And people will go for that. But I mean, I certainly wouldn't.
Yeah.
Well, and also I was like, do they really need to advertise that there's only 12% in it? It looks exactly like the stuff. The branding is exactly the same, except it's the Taste. And I said, who's going to fall for that if they're trying to avoid the stuff because it looks exactly the same. Except for the colors are a little different. But I mean, the overall theme is the same. So I was like, I don't even think they'd have to advertise that it contains the stuff in it. I think people will just kind of assume based off of the branding.
Well, and there's no ingredients or anything. So why did they make it a point to talk about how much stuff is in it? Like there's nothing on it, but you've got to make sure we let them know there's only 12%
There's only
in there.
12%. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. And they kept the name like close enough too. It's not the stuff, it's the taste.
Yeah.
Like it's some kind of, evolution of the stuff. I mean, but at that point, people are going to be like, well, that stuff was killing people. So why would we want to even 12% of that? Like, you think you'd change the name to something that isn't like and then something that just doesn't mean anything, like the taste. That means less than the stuff.
Yep.
Either way, these guys are about to meet their demise in a matter of speaking. After Moe says that he's got Jason with him, and then Jason walks in with that big box full of the stuff, and Moe pulls out that pistol and says, "You guys are going to eat all that." And Jason puts that big mound of the containers in front of them, and it's Fletcher who decides, like, at first he's not going to eat it, and then we get that really weird "eat it" from Moe that it's like the weirdest line delivery I've ever witnessed.
Oh gosh,
I love it.
But again, so we get this last scene where, like, oh, that's right, Moe's the main guy, back in this scene. It's like, why did we just have the last 20 to 25 minutes where he wasn't this? That would have been so much better. So it like just immediately reminded me of, like, well, we should have just had Moe finishing this story up, but no. So the two of them are rendered basically mindless idiots by the stuff. And then we get the final scene, which is probably the most true scene of the entire movie, and that is some guys, some shady looking characters coming up with a little box and doing that little taste test of the stuff like it's a drug. And it looks like they're doing little back alley deals for the stuff like it's a drug. So, and then it cuts to the very end. So I would say they hit the nail on the head there right at the end.
Why does everybody taste the stuff in such a weird way? Like they put their like 2 fingers in there and just really get in there and put it in their mouth.
Yep.
Like, why are they all doing that?
Yep. That goes back to that like drug thing that like you put your finger in there and be like, nope, this is how you take. Yeah, it's a really weird way of doing it.
Did you guys recognize the one drug dealer? I read that too in some of the trivia. It was Patrick Dempsey.
No,
the curly-haired
I did
one
not
with
know
the
that.
like had the jacket up like around his face.
Really? No.
Yeah.
Now that you
I
say
was like,
that,
there he is.
Nope, I did not see that. Now I'll have to like go back and look.
And apparently Mira Sorvino has a small little like cameo too, but I'm not sure where she's in that one. So
yeah, I did see that. I didn't look for her the next time through, but yeah, I did see that. So that is our movie. So just a couple questions here to wrap up. So do we think this functions as a horror movie, or is it more like comedic satire?
Comedic satire, I think. I mean, it's a horrifying concept to have like the world be overtaken by the stuff. But I mean, as far as like actual horror elements with like the gore, I mean, there's some, I guess, but it was more funny to me than horror.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I pretty much have the same thing. It's comedic satire. Like you said, there's horrific elements to it, but there's so few casualties. Even the people that we think die, like the postal worker, is still alive. I mean, he gets killed in the end, but he's alive after the first, terrible thing that happens to him. Like, it's a 50s monster movie that like isn't scary, but it's trying to make its point.
Yeah.
And then, who is the main character of the movie? Is it Moe?
I think so. I mean, I don't feel like we know enough even. I mean, we see Jason, but I feel like we still don't know enough about him or his family for Jason to be a main character, in my opinion. So yeah, I'm going to say Moe. I'm going to say David.
David Moe Rutherford.
That's right. Yeah, I would say Moe. He's the one we know the most about. He's the one that takes most of the action. So I would say Moe.
Yeah. And, I wrote like, ostensibly it's Moe. I think when I was first thinking up that question, I was like, is it actually just the conspiracy that's kind of the main thing here? Because that's really what's pushing the movie along. Like, is it a conceptual engine that moves this thing along? Because again, we don't know what he's doing from scene to scene necessarily. Like, even he's being dragged along by the conspiracy for a decent portion of the movie. There's plenty of him doing his own kind of work. But if there wasn't a character, obviously he's the main guy, he's the one that we're following. But, a lot of it too is that conspiracy that's kind of moving things through. And like, yeah, I feel like that's at least part of it. But yeah, he's definitely the main character and the one that we're following. And like you said, the one that we know the most about. But on some level, I think Larry Cohen was probably trying to make this as much about his point, his consumerism addiction, kind of satirical point. So I think he pushed that to the forefront at sometimes. And I think that's when I said that, like, I got kind of lost at certain points, and I think Moe gets lost at certain points, and that's when he's really kind of pushing that stuff to the front, which is fine, but it's kind of hard to juggle both of those things.
I realized after watching this movie that I haven't hardly seen any of his films. Like I looked and I've seen Maniac Cop and then Captivity like 100 years ago. And I think that's all that I've seen. I haven't seen any other ones. Have you guys watched a lot of them or?
Just recently, we had watched Q, the Winged
Mhm.
Serpent,
Mm-hmm.
which is another Michael Moriarty movie.
Yeah.
He's much less likable in that movie.
Yeah, he is. Yeah. I mean, I didn't like it as much as this one. That one, I think, gets a little bit more praise than this one, but
Yeah.
I thought the stuff was better as a
Mhm.
movie. And then I had watched one of his, was it a couple weeks ago? There's one called God Told Me To,
Mhm.
which is an interesting one. I really liked that one. I thought that was really well done. A different kind of like supernatural tale, but it's kind of creepy and it's kind of weird. But I thought it was interesting. And I only watched that because we were going to be doing this. And I was like,
Yeah.
well, let me watch, another Larry Cohen movie. And yeah, I liked that one. And it was funny. I looked it up, and that was one that Roger Ebert gave 1 star to. I guess me and Roger don't agree on that one. I was like, I liked it, Raj. What do you want me to tell you? But yeah, I think other than that, yeah. And he wrote Maniac Cop, right?
That's the thing that always makes me kind of crazy whenever I Google people. It's like it shows you like you look at their movies and then it has a whole bunch of movies. And then if you don't like go into them and inspect, they'll say like, yeah.
Mhm.
So yeah, I don't know if Maniac Cop was if it was written by him or not. I didn't look at it more,
When you
but
look him up, when you click on his IMDb page, it
uh-huh.
comes up with his writing credits first. Because
Oh,
it
okay,
says
yeah.
like writer,
Yeah.
director, and like so that comes up first. Because I thought I was just like, oh, did he direct that? And I was like, I thought that was like Bill Lustig, I think, that directed that. But
Uh,
yeah, he wrote it. But I mean,
okay.
he's known as a writer, obviously. Like he writes this
Mhm.
good stuff, and I don't know how much of that movie was his final script, but yeah, it's still a Larry Cohen movie, I would say.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this movie, like I understand the themes of it, but at the same time, I'm like, I really don't know what I watched. I mean, I do, but at the same time, I don't. What is that? You know, we don't really know anything about any of the characters except for Mo. We don't know really what the stuff is. We don't know why people are doing what they're doing necessarily. The end.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, that's.
Yep.
Go ahead, Rebecca.
No, I was just gonna say I agree. I mean, you have to watch it from the viewpoint of like this is a drug.
Mm-hmm.
It's a drug, and that's why people are doing what they're doing and why people are acting the way they're acting. And in terms of otherwise, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't because you're like, well, why are they doing this? Why does the stuff do this to them? We don't know anything about it. But if you watch it from the viewpoint of, well, the stuff is a drug and it gets them high, or whatever, then you watch it and you're like, oh, okay, that's why they're doing this, or that's why they're making so much money off of this, or that's why, but yeah, it's very unclear, all the things of the motivations and how it works. And it's all very unclear.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why part of me, probably why I even thought that the concept was the main character of this movie, because they spend so little time in telling us who the characters are, or the rules of the stuff, or what it does, where it came from, what its purpose is. And we spend more time just kind of seeing what, following this conspiracy along and its effect, I suppose, on the world, and this consumerism idea, and the, like you were saying, Rebecca, the drug, really highlighting like that's like that it's so similar to that. Like we're supposed to be connecting those dots about what he's trying to portray, what these things are supposed to represent, without really telling us who anybody is or what are the rules of this movie at all. And then, like you said, you get to the end of the movie and you're like, what the hell did I just watch? Like, what it's going to be like, is the stuff done? Or is there more? They said there's more around the world. So have they actually completed their plan? Or is this just one of those, kind of at the end of the horror movie where they say, that the evil will continue? Like, this is just like, that's the way of the world. Yeah, it can make money. People are going to keep doing it. So yeah, they didn't stop anything, but I suppose they can make these people pay for what they started. That's about all I can say for it.
Did you see there was an end credit scene too?
No.
Like after the
No.
credits roll, there's just one little like flash and there's an actress that pops up And apparently you're supposed to know who she is. And I was like, I don't know who she is. But, and she just had, it almost looks like she's like in the tub or in the bathroom with the stuff. And it's like the stuff. And then that's it. And I'm like, well, what was the point of that at the end? I wonder, maybe they were thinking they were going to make a sequel. I don't know. Or just for the hell of it. But I'm like, man, they were ahead of Marvel back then, because now every movie you watch now, you're like, I got to wait till the end to see if there's more,
to see what's going on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I thought that was interesting.
It's interesting.
What year was this movie?
5.
85.
Mhm.
So part of me was wondering, when did the war on drug, like the big like anti-drug, war on drug campaign start in the 80s? I know that they did a lot of the Just Say No campaign and all of that. And part of me wonders too, if this movie has to do with that.
Yeah.
I don't know if it coincides. Like I didn't look it up, so I don't know if it coincides, but part of me wonders if that has anything to do with it.
If Reagan was president at the time, wasn't his wife, Nancy Reagan, like sort of on that Say No to Drugs thing? Was she part of that campaign?
Mhm.
Yeah, that's why I mean, like, I think it was the 80s, because that was when because that was part of her deal, was like she was part of the Just Say No and all that. So that's why I was like, I don't know when that happened. I guess I could look it up real quick.
I'm actually looking it up right now. They're talking about like Reagan had a Comprehensive Crime Control Act of 84, which like expanded penalties on drugs and whatnot. So that was 84.
Well, yeah, and in 84 is when she started the Just Say No campaign. And then the US Congress passed in 86 the Anti-Drug Abuse Act. So yeah, so maybe this had something to do with that as well. Because, obviously this has a lot of similarities to crack, this drug, and how it works. And I mean, it's white, and because, them talking about like, oh, I never get tired. Well, crack does that to you. I've lost weight. Well, crack does that to you. So I think of crack with this movie a lot if we think of it from the drug side. And so that was also coming around. Like, I feel like that was really high in the 80s. So I wonder how much of that, how much he was thinking of those things while he made this movie.
Yeah, it's a really good point.
Yep, definitely. Yeah, I wasn't thinking about like the crackdown on drugs, how it was in the 80s. Yep.
So it could be why they, like you said, they made it about the concept and less about the characters.
Yeah.
And then, like you were saying, Ainsley, before they cut out so much in between stuff that maybe they cut out a lot of the character stuff and just kind of left in like, this is the message I want to leave in there. So
yeah,
we'll leave the characters on the cutting room floor and we'll just make sure people get the point. Which is, I mean, I can appreciate that. But, as if you're just watching it the first time, you get done with it and you're just like, who the hell are these people? And what the hell just happened?
Yeah. I kind of like that about horror, though. I feel like it was sort of that way with Silent Night, Deadly Night when we did that too. And I had mentioned, like, is there something going on with the Catholic Church at the time with all the themes in that movie? Like, I kind of like that horror does take things from culture or in the news or whatever's going on at the time, and they wrap it in there somehow and make it horror. And if you don't like, like with this one being older, if you don't like research it or whatever, if you weren't alive during that time, you wouldn't know just watching it. So I feel like, I think it's kind of cool that they do that, because then you kind of have to look more into a backstory in a way.
Yep.
Yeah, because a lot of the dramatic movies of the time that come out are going to be directly about it. You get like movies like Traffic, which are like so directly about drugs that like, all right, we get the point. Like it's a 2-hour movie or whatever. It just hits you over the head with everything. Or you can watch this kind of movie that hides it within its little story. And you're like, okay, I see what they're getting at. They're using, these kind of cool metaphors and whatnot that's going on. So yeah, that it is so cool that horror kind of adapts and takes these concepts and puts them in their own little world and makes them horrific. This one isn't scary or anything like that, but it, it's still kind of horrific. And how many, took away this kid's family, what I mean? That's horrific enough. So yeah, it is a very cool way that the genre does that. All right, and that is going to wrap up this discussion of the stuff. Right after we recorded the episode, I realized we didn't mention It's Alive when we talked about other Larry Cohen movies we've seen. And I have seen that one. I've not seen the sequels, but I do like the first one quite a bit, so I wanted to mention it here before we get out. If you are looking for more of the One Dark Fright podcast, we'll be posting new episodes every month, and they're available on Spotify and Amazon and Google and Apple and Stitcher and all the places you would get your podcasts from. If you want to keep up with all the goings-on of the show, feel free to give us a follow On Twitter and Facebook, we're available at One Dark Fright, and then Instagram, it's One Dark Fright Pod. And we also have a pod page now where you can subscribe and receive updates from us. And that can be found at podpage.com/one-dark-fright. Yeah, we're pretty excited about that. And you can also get each of the episodes from that website as well. So good information there. For Ainsley Pompey, Rebecca Kittner, and myself, Tim Waverla, we thank you for listening, and we'll see you all next time.